In Australia, we remember and celebrate many important dates. One date that is particularly important to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is National Sorry Day. It takes place on the 26th of May each year. Some events in our country's history are remembered but not celebrated because they remind us of the sad and painful stories in our shared history. First Nations people come from more than 250 nations and language groups across the mainland and islands north and south of Australia, each with their very strong connection to country. For First Nations people, Sorry Day recognises the truth of how the forced removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, also known as the stolen generations, still affects them, their families and communities today. From 1910 to the 1970s, the Australian government had policies in place that meant that First Nations children could be forcibly removed from their families. These children were placed on missions, reserves, or in training homes such as Kinchela Boys' Home and Cootamundra Girls' Home in New South Wales. Many of these children lost their names, language and identity and never saw their families again. This had a devastating effect on their culture and identity, and it still hurts today. Between 1 in 10 and 1 in 3 Aboriginal children were removed from their families. When Prime Minister Paul Keating made his Redfern Park speech on the 10th of December 1992, this was the first time the pain suffered by First Nations people had been recognised by the Australian government. In 1998, the first National Sorry Day took place, and personal apologies were made to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people by 24,763 Australian people. Then, in 2000, the Corroboree Bridge Walk in Sydney saw more than 250,000 Australians walking in solidarity with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across the Sydney Harbour Bridge. The 26th of May marks the beginning of a very important week for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and for all Australians. It is called Reconciliation Week. Reconciliation means the coming together of Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. This also means acknowledging that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have suffered injustices. We need to work together to change this for the future by recognising the truth and helping each other to heal. Through reconciliation, we focus on the respectful relationships shared by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and other Australians, where we all walk side by side. National Sorry Day is a day where we acknowledge the strength of stolen generation survivors and reflect on how we can all play a part in the healing process for our people and nation. For this reason, it is also called a National Day of Healing. Flying the Indigenous flags on National Sorry Day marks the significance of these events for all Australians and is a sign of respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and culture.